Oh, oh God. Oh God, dude, what have you done? What are you doing? Hold on. This dude just lost like just not okay. Let's put it into all right. Hey. So dude on Twitter whatever says that the climate change is natural. None of what we're doing has anything to do with it. And of course, that's a stupid thing. The real question is how much of what is happening on Earth is based on everything natural, and how much extra is happening because of humanity's influence with, like, cars and jets, rockets, burping cows, and the 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 of all things, I'm just gonna say it. He didn't even mention forest fires. He doesn't even mention forest fires. He mentions volcanoes, but not forest fires. We have had forest fires, and guess what? That has an effect also. But there's the thing that there's a reason why I made this video. My response, okay, is something about a graph. And it's pissing me off a little bit. Where the hell is that fucking graph? Okay, so there's a graph. I will find the graph. Not that one. I mean, this is a good graph. Don't get me wrong. This is an excellent graph right here. Look at that graph. Look at the video to find a better, like, full screen picture of this. But the point is, this graph shows a bunch of different ways that the Earth has the sun and everything else. It pulls it all in. So there was an idea. It mentions about the amount of brightness of the sun, solar minimum, solar maximum, and stuff like that. And he mentions about how, and I made a comment. Where the hell is it? It's like freaking right there. It is. Now the unfortunate thing is, I saw this and I automatically saw a correlation.
While Earth's average temperature, as you're probably tired of hearing by now, has gone the other way, up. On longer timescales, the sun does sometimes enter longer periods of lower than average or higher than average brightness that can.
Now, the reason why anyone who's a real scientist knows about climate stuff and whatever else, this is a year ago. Now, I'm going to say there's a big problem with this because he mentions in the same video how if you're closer to the sun and farther away from the sun, and what is that causality? What's the connection? How much heat?
Sun in early January and at its farthest in early July. Gravitationally tugged on by all those other planets that no one even lives on. Right now, Earth is closest to the sun in early January and at its farthest in early July.
Closest to the sun in January and farthest in July, meaning nearby the sun. And this is what I said in a comment before I saw this section of the video. So what I said was, why do I remember a thing about Earth's orbit correlating with winter and summer inversely? That away from the sun with summer and cooler in the winter is because of this part of the video that I probably saw a year ago and was like, wait, no, there's something because I saw it again, when I see this video again, the inverse correlation of the sun's heat, and then I mentioned this weather thing, and that's what happens. You're closer to the sun, more energy is put in, that's what makes winter happen. So if you understand that and you go back to this annoying little graph, you end up seeing a correlation between the heat, right? There's a sharp down and there's a sharp up. They're not exactly correlated, but there is some correlation there that's like, huh, I wonder what that's about. And then there's another thing. And he doesn't mention this also, but there's stuff like, oh, I don't know, if you melt the icebergs by being a little bit too warm, he also doesn't mention like ice and how we melt it with salt and how salt do we fight fires? Do we want to fight fires, or do we want fires to fight climate change for us? That's the real question. So, this video irks me simply because in the same video as the inverse solar activity, because if we're closer to the sun, it's the same thing as the sun being brighter. So if we're closer to the sun and it makes us have winter, as we see in this section of the video, then if there's a dimmer, we are expected to get warmer. And that's because less heat able to affect the system means less winter in total, because winter is an exaggeration in a larger amount of heat. The hotter it is, like, can do something, but it's like, I don't know, just the fact that this exists, that knowing that we're closer to the sun in January, is that even true? Is it even true? Has that always been true? And if so, then the brightening and dimming that we see in the other graph is just as important to note, because it bloody well is a noticeable thing happening. It's getting dimmer, but we're getting hotter. Why? But we mentioned the other correlation. So it's like, you get it. I'm mad. I literally said proofread your script, dude. Because, like, come on. It's not okay to have this in your video and not say, hey, you know what? It's interesting. We don't get as much sun and we end up warmer as a result. Isn't it interesting how counterintuitive facts keep on popping into my head and being true. Like this whole thing, right here. This thing, this is infuriating.
Closest to the sun in early January and at its farthest in early July.
Farthest in July. Less sunlight. You're actually radiating more heat, less heat into here, and yet you're getting hotter. Now, here's the thing. Here's the kicker, right? What's happening to this orbit? Where are we now? Because I tell you what, I was out in September in shorts. Now, does that mean that we're even farther away from the sun than usual? Has something kick-started something? Did something change how fast the orbit of the speed of the Earth's rotation? What else has happened? I want like more, so much more details that like, yeah, he said, I know that he said it would take like so many books to mention all of this stuff. Um, it's like there's just too much details.
More jiggliness means higher temperature, and less jiggliness means lower temperature.
So it's weird because you don't think of January as being closer to the sun. You think of it as being colder. You think of winter. And it's one of those epiphanies that's like you can't not say it in a video. You have to say it. So I've said it. What else is there? Well, he also mentions about how like CO2, it turns into acid, it goes into the water, and it ends up turning into limestone, which is neat.
Then falls to the surface in rain. That acid dissolves those fresh new rocks in a process called chemical weathering, which releases ions that get washed into the ocean. There, ions like
I can't help but think that the other thing that gets washed into the ocean is salt. It's because I hear about the massive butt ton of quantity of salt that we use when we deal with winter. And I can't help but think that liquefied with the snow flowing in directly through our sewage pipes, getting out there into the it goes into the rivers, it changes stuff there. You end up being like, oh, there's also stuff about rivers being more messed up, and we can't drink from them, we can't fish from them, and stuff. He doesn't mention the rivers that we can't fish from. Maybe he does. There are many details to focus on in this video. The point is, I think I've said enough. As usual, I usually just ramble on a few times. Mention Patreons, because of course. But it's like,
wobbles that you should know about is the shape of Earth's orbit, known as eccentricity. Basically, how circular or elliptical is our path around the sun, as Earth gets gravitationally tugged on by all those other planets that no one even lives on. Right now, Earth is closest to the sun in early January and at its farthest in early July. That means about 6.8% more incoming solar radiation reaches Earth in January than in July. But over the next 100,000 years or so, the difference in solar radiation between Earth's closest and farthest approaches to the sun will be about 23%. There's also the angle that Earth's...
Okay, hold on.
But over the next 100,000 years or so...
I don't care about 100,000 years. That is too big of a time scale to mention and is fun to think about, but you have to repeat and go and shrink it down to the next 10 to 50 years. Because I don't need to hear about hundreds of thousands, I need to hear about the 10 to 50 years. When you go into hundreds of thousands, you're like, okay, you average it out or something else, and we understand it's a gradient, it's small, it's not going to do that much. It's only like 23% something.
So the difference in solar radiation between Earth's closest and farthest approaches to the sun will be about 23%. There's also the angle that Earth's axis is tilted, known as...
So at some point, it went from being 6% to 23%, meaning weather should be going from more extreme winters to more extreme summers. We're just experiencing more summer. So there's a curiosity about that. That's just an observation applied to your analysis and whatever.
Obliquity. Now, while Earth's axis is currently around 23.5 degrees off vertical, over the last million years it's varied between 22.1 and 24.5 degrees. Since this tilt can affect how intense sunlight is on a given area or surface, this can affect Earth's overall climate, especially the extent of ice at the poles. Finally, there's the precession of Earth's axis, kind of like how a spinning top turns as it turns. Not only does this mean that over time the North Star won't be the North Star anymore, but also when combined with those other orbital wobbles, it can exacerbate the difference between winter and summer in each.
It turns as it turns, but does it turn and then change where it's moving, like shifts a little bit of what part of it turns? Because it could be turning and turning, but like still stay within the same like up and down variance. Like the maximum it can ever be is, and there's a reason for this, it's spinning and rotating. It could be tidally locked within that rotation. Why do I say spin and rotate? The spinning has to do with the Earth's rotation, but the Earth's rotation is on an axis. But this wobbly thing is a separate kind of spin. It's like a pool ball that's constantly on whatever, you get it. That it's doing this other turn, but the angle of that thing, and it does change the angle, so we've noticed that, and it goes up and down. So it's like, but it's been going up and down. It's not been fluctuating towards like the poles are going to face the sun at some point. That's my question. It's a valid statement, because if it's going to go up and down like that,
0.1 and 24.5 degrees. And since this tilt can affect how intense a spinning top turn bubbles, it can exert Hollywood actor John Milton Milankovitch. Solar radiation hits Earth's mid-latitudes.
See how it wobbles back and forth, and it goes from the angle is, but it's still, is it going up and down in that, and it has a restriction of it'll go like maybe 20 degrees one way, or 10, whatever.
Depending on how the peaks and valleys of the Milankovitch cycles line up, or don't, they can change how much solar radiation hits Earth's mid-latitudes by up to 25%. That can take enough energy out of Earth.
Now the question I'm saying is the upper bound of where that motion goes, it seems to go from like 11 back to 12 o'clock. Does it ever go to 10 o'clock? Does it ever go to 1 o'clock? And the answer to the 1 o'clock, okay, 12 o'clock is the obvious. Does it ever go to 10 o'clock is what I'm really asking, because there's nothing else about that. So if it ever goes to 10 o'clock, we can assume that eventually it may go to 9 o'clock. It may go to, yeah, and then it would just face the sun. with one of the poles, and it's like that pole would be constantly irradiated with heat as we spin like a wheel flat on the ground, and our rotation is in the same direction as a wheel on the ground instead of being a spin top on our side like we are usually. All this is very fascinating analysis.
Budget to kick off long stretches of time where Earth is covered in massive ice sheets and global sea levels drop, like it was back when humans could just walk over into North America. We call those ice ages. Milankovitch cycles can also.
Okay, look. There is something about there's something curious about the sea levels dropping because ice at the same amount of water, once it's turned into ice, it takes up the same volume, but it is lighter than water, you know? So it would displace water, you know? Like it would capture a lot of it, but then it would displace a lot of it. At some point, when it gets into the point of icebergs, then you have the displacement of is different than the amount that, you know, even though it's light, it's like it will, and that's basically why icebergs grow the way that they do, like a stalactite, is because it starts as a singular object, right? And then because of the way the iceberg has like a it, say that it starts as a small patch of ice or snow that's like it's frozen, it just turns and it gets some snow on it, right? The heavier bit dips into the water and it pulls it down. But then as it pulls it down, other stuff on the top is able to form. And as it keeps doing that, it can keep on forming and keep on going down. So it's cold, even though it's deep down, and then more and more layers build up on top of it. And it can only get wider as it goes up, because I mean, if it was top heavy, that it just wouldn't float that way. That's just science. So it's like that. That's also neat. Um, Now, overall conjecture, blah blah blah. How does the dimming of the sun mean? In my opinion, does the dimming of the sun mean that there is a greater natural effect than we predict, or he predicted, based on analysis? Like, if you got that basic thing wrong, even though it's in the same part of the video, like this part, where you mentioned the thing, where we're closer to the sun in January, which is so weird, and you mentioned this other thing, where the the sun is getting dimmer sometimes. And the dimness in this graph, where the fuck is the graph? There's the graph. It's getting dimmer, right? So my understanding of this graph is that there is a correlation with the sun getting dimmer and everything else getting hotter. Technically, this graph shows that there has been other things happening because it goes up and down, and you would think that it would make sense that it would go down extra. Actually, let's take let me take a good look at this graph personally on my iPad which is a much bigger screen. And where the frick is that graph? Something about the moon. There it is.
The key to great skin is exfoliating and moisturizing.
Shut up. I need to get past this commercial. Sorry about this. Okay, there we go. Pause the video. Who cares? Just look at the graph. Okay, the difference between 1880 and 2020. Okay, so that's 140 years. And it's gone from, the dimness is gone down, whatever amount is on those yellow numbers. So from 1361 to 1360, what, wait, 1361 and a half to 1360 and a half. That's a whole, whatever that means of brightness. The basic thing to take out of this is that the dimness is correlating some. In fact, the times where it's lining up nicely, and then there's like this jolt, is like not. It's not fully correlating all the events, but it's like at one point it's the height and the highest points and the high points and low points are matched up, but the events happen like weird. It got dimmer and then it got hotter. And then as the brightness goes up, the temperature went down. And then there was a little bit of dim and it went up again. And then it went brighter. And somehow it still went up. Like it was there's that big jump of right here where it goes up, that big hill. And then it's about even. And it goes down again, and then we get a bit of a push of heat. It goes up, but it's still going up, and then it goes way down with the dimness. And then it's still going up. So that's what I'm seeing in this. The temperature, the dimness goes down, the heat went up. And like the cycles of the up and down are like off put by like a little bit. Right? The effect happens after you've experienced the dimness, which is obvious. Like, you don't experience the dimness effect until after it has taken hold for like a little bit. So like it's not as it's happening, it's then you look at the next moment and then the heat responds. Either way, it shows that in the time of 1990 to 2000, which is around this part right here, the spot where it's just starting to rise, there is an extra brightness. So that means it's not fully correlated with the brightness. There's something extra happening. But then the brightness goes dimmer again to an all-time lowest dim ever, and we end up with the end of this bar. It's correlating again. If you understand the dimness and the full brightness and the full temperature scale situation as being the same correlation as you notice with the sun situation. This. I can't stress enough how much these two parts of the video are like, and you didn't clue that in together. I just can't. I can't with you right now. So yeah. I am noticing that for like 10, what is that? For 20 years, between 1980 and 2000, there was a big rise, which is interesting because the Industrial Revolution, you'd think you would experience a constant rise, but like at some point, it seems everything ramped up even more with more stuff collecting the heat so it gets hotter. Right? It's weird. It's weird because, like, it's weird to think of the dimness making summer. Like, it's because it's a slow burn, right? When you cook something fast, I already made the point that the reason why winter happens the way it does is because of excited um, clouds and stuff. Oh, the reason why a year ago I may have already made a response video to this, that YouTube channel is dead. So blame YouTube for not knowing about my expert analysis of your video and the response. Here's a new response because I finally got my attention back to this video. There you go. I hope this was helpful. If you don't understand it, I'm just trying to say that there is definitely something that's like, there is extra happening with humans. Humans have had a bigger impact in that section of 1998 to 2000. There is a bigger jump between 2000 and 2020, but it's now correlated with the dimness. The jump I'm noticing, right after the sun, there it is. There, friggin' it is. There it is. This thing, where you show this and you're like, okay, yeah, well, this part here, this section of 2000, 1980 to 2000, that section was the most uncoordinated thing ever when it comes to the sun. After that, it becomes coordinated again. That's what I'm noticing. It's crazy how coordinated it is. The less, I swear, like this part here, the less dimness equaled the more. After a little bit, it started going up, then you got more dimness. It also got hotter, but then it was lower again, so it even increased. And it's like, wait, you don't see that there's, I mean, this big bump means something. That's something. But like, that's the beginning of the revolution there in 1940. The 1940 bump is a big thing. It's almost half as big as the 1990 bump, 1980, 1990 bump. That thing over here, 1980. This is the 1940s. This is the 1980s, right? You get it? Blah, correlation. The bumps are big at those points. meaning the events of there definitely had something going on there. And it's possible that we're still having a big influence, but the interesting thing is, okay, well, if you think that we need more solar radiation to make ourselves have less climate change, less heat build up, um, yeah, we gotta we gotta either figure out how to get closer to the sun, ironically, so that we can have more extreme differences in hot and cold, leading to winters that are correct and proper and good, or we need to start inducing, ironically, more heat. In other words, this will fix itself. Is a like it's just a random thing that I just said just then that came out of analysis that it could just fix itself. Will it? I don't know. The thing is, right? Heat kept in the thing over time is like as I said with the slow burn. With a slow burn, you end up with your food well and truly cooked, properly through and through, right? It's a deeper heat. So, what if we need like it's weird. It's so freaking weird that the summer that thing happens. This is the This right here is the weirdest freaking thing I've ever heard in my life, and the fact that it is the truth is the weirdest thing. I can't get over it. I just can't. This is what happens when you don't have a script. Um, this is like the main draft of the concept of the presentation. But I mean, if you have the patience to be like, okay, yeah, he said this. He could have just said that in 5 seconds. Maybe I will. Maybe I will. Yeah, I'm gonna do that right now. Just goodbye.